How do you see this ending? Does Zelensky get killed like Salvatore Allende with a machine gun in his hand at the last minute?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I think the Russians, who have always known where he was from the very first moment, have very carefully avoided doing any damage whatsoever to him personally. I think the Russians would like someone that they can negotiate with, and they're negotiating with him and this small team that he sends to the negotiations in Belarus in the hopes that they could end this with the least trouble as possible. Thus far, it hasn't worked. And I think it hasn't worked not because Zelensky's not willing to sign up, because he's given indications that he would. It's because we won't allow it to stop. So the real question is, when are we going to allow this killing to end? When are we going to allow some sort of treaty to emerge, or at least a ceasefire that results in a treaty? And that depends on the extent to which we ultimately find out that we failed in our attempt to bleed Ukraine, bleed the Russians, and remove Putin.
I can't foresee Joe Biden acknowledging failure, or stated differently, declaring victory and going home. I mean, his approval ratings keep going up with every tick of the clock. He's got the hawks in both parties behind him. And if it was up to some of those Republican senators, we'd have troops on the ground. I just don't. I don't see the American military, industrial complex, and diplomatic folks recognizing the error of their ways. Do you?
Well, there is something interesting here that merits attention. All of the retired generals who speak publicly all say exactly the same thing. It's really quite striking. The last time I remember this happening was on our way into Iraq in 2003. Everyone spoke with one voice. Everyone read from the same sheet of music. That's what we have right now. And you're right. The so-called Republicans have turned out to be a big disappointment, because they don't reflect the views of their respective constituents. I dare anybody to find anyone in the United States who is gung-ho for going to war outside of Washington. I don't see any evidence for it. I think Americans are worried about inflation, food prices, gasoline prices. They're worried about their standard of living. They're worried about employment, all of those things. I don't see any evidence that anybody is terribly concerned about going to war to right all the wrongs that allegedly Mr. Putin has caused. So you have this bubble, and all of these people are involved in this narrative, and they're pushing it very, very hard. Well, obviously, they probably think they stand to benefit from this, certainly in terms of income from various donors who want to see conflict, right? Not just your defense organizations. But if you dig a little deeper inside the Department of Defense and you start talking to people who are over there at lower levels, they're all very frightened of the possibility we might have to fight the Russians, because they know we're not prepared to do it. And then there's the nuclear dimension. That's even more lunatic, because there are no winners in a nuclear exchange. That's widely understood.
Right.
So all of this is at the top. It's very, very strange. But then again, remember, Judge, we went almost overnight from the existential threat of the global caliphate to no more mention of the global caliphate, right, and to the great existential threat that China represents. All of a sudden, China's taken something of a back seat, and out of nowhere comes, the existential threat that Russia presents. It is amazing, in my judgment. So the government, how do we get out of it? Well, the mainstream media is pretty elastic. They change very rapidly.